So actually this morning I was at Bocconi and I saw an example of Jennifer actually. So because there's somebody who was filling in one of those automatic distributors with bottles of water. And this person, I never seen a machine was so fast as that person. You know, it was really very, very fast. And we were, like with a couple of colleagues, we were just astonished at that. So in a sense, so this is real, yeah? So the question is, with all these innovations, what will be the role of us humans? So that's a question we are asking as well here at Bocconi, because we are training the future generation of workers in a way. We have to ask ourselves, what are the skills our students need to acquire? So in a sense, this reflection here is useful for this broader theme that is relevant for us in education. So now I will sit here and I will call the panelists one by one. So first, and then maybe we'll also call Tim at the end because we have a fourth chair, so we want to see him as well. So first we have Roberto Villa. Please, Roberto, come. So Roberto is an engineer. So he's a manager of human-centric practice and research ecosystems. I hope I got it right.
Yes.
So that's your title at IBM. So maybe first question for Roberto, explain a bit what your role is at IBM and how it's relevant for today's panel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me in this relevant conversation today with Team Harford. So my role in IBM is to bring all the innovation that is developing in the world, in the IBM labs, and see which element is relevant for our enterprises in Italy. Because this is, let's say, true not just for IBM, but for all the major corporations that are operating in Italy. The boundaries are not, let's say, the boundaries of the nation. Today, we are operating in a global environment, so there is the need to have in each country a team that is able to bridge, to build this bridge with research labs where the innovation happen and the local enterprises in the countries. So to start, keep in consideration one of the comments by Tim. It was interesting, the point on the fact that technology, to be effective, should not drop in a system that has been designed with a different concept. So transformation requires re-engineering of the process and in some cases redefinition of the business model. So this is why since 2 years ago we have established in Italy a unit called Research and Business, because innovation happens when we are able to look at the research lab with the eyes of the businessman and understand how a patent, how a new technology asset can change the business we are running today. So this is, let's say, in a nutshell, the mission, my mission in Italy within the research and business team.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we'll get back to this idea that for innovation to come fully to fruition, you need many other innovations that are complementary to that, Yeah. So, but a quick question, just for just a curiosity on my side. So you're saying you're basically connecting the corporate world with the research university world. Do you also have connection with universities in Italy, or mostly? Yes.
No, I mean university. Part of my role is research ecosystem. Research ecosystem is the set of all entities in Italy. This includes university, include research center like CNR in Italy, ET from Genoa, because at the end we need to leverage the competences where they are. today the innovation is so fast that we cannot, wait the time to develop skill if you have not available inside your enterprise. So the ones that are more successful are the ones that are able to leverage the asset and the competences that are available in the ecosystem.
Fantastic. Thank you. So now we're ready for the second guest, Angelo D'Imporzano. Please, Angelo, come.
Good afternoon.
So Angelo is Senior Managing Director at Accenture, and is responsible to drive Accenture's businesses within the consumer industries in Europe and Latin America.
Correct.
Yeah?
Correct.
So actually, another good thing about Angelo, that is a proud Bocconi alumnus.
Sure.
So, and actually, you graduated in 1993,
yeah.
Am I right? So I graduated in 92, so maybe
yeah.
we were
probably we were
here at the same
year.
time.
Yes.
I see. So you entered probably around 87 or something like that,
yeah.
So I also did. So yeah, we probably spent many years in the same place.
Yeah.
And maybe we looked a bit different. We must have crossed paths back
Sadly,
then.
yes.
Yes. So actually, I met knowingly Angelo this summer at the inauguration of ACIN, which is Accenture Customer Innovation Network here in Milan, in Piazza Gaulenti. There was a very nice party. And maybe, Angelo, you can tell us a bit about this very nice center here, where you can see the future of retail.
Yeah. Mainly, as you said, I'm responsible for driving our Accenture businesses across Europe for all the customers that are working in the consumer goods, retail, and fashion industries. And we have been able to attract in Italy a big investment that Accenture is doing in order to pull together the ecosystem of research and development that we are doing ourselves and with our partners. And what we have put here in Milan in the ACIN, exactly in Piazza Gaulenti, is a center that is connecting the wider Accenture innovation architecture. What it is a place where we are trying to bring together the power and the possible disruption that is coming from technology, together with the research and the human-centric approach, in order to facilitate our customer and the different players in the ecosystem to understand the possibilities and potentially the transformational impact that technologies has in the society and in the context of a company. So this is a little why I'm here. And we tend to keep research and development and the business development, the line of business together, because the essence of Accenture is about transformation, and transformation without technology and innovation is somehow impossible nowadays.
You know, I don't know whether you open to the public as well, your center, because it's really fun if some people are interested, because what you can see there, you can experience the shops of the future, for example. Correct. You know, it's a really cool,
the idea is to apply in the context of our everyday life the possibility that an augmented capability that is coming from technology and the different way of doing things looks like. So there is the shop of the future, the concept of the digital bar, or a new idea of a boutique. So there are human-driven interaction with empowered by the application of technology.
Yeah. And I guess in this area of design and fashion, we in Italy, we're a bit at the frontier. So this is like a leading center for Europe.
This is exactly
beyond,
this is exactly how Accenture is working. Similarly, I think to IBM, we have a different point of research, different point where we are doing venture, different point where we are doing open innovation programs. What we are then doing, we are choosing some locations that are meaningful for a specific reason to a specific kind of business, and we are trying to pull together all this power in a place. If we are talking of consumer goods, fashion, and retail, we have 3 centers across the world where we are pulling together all the rest. For what concerns Europe, it was very meaningful to link food and fashion to Italy. So this has been our possibility to attract a wider investment of the company in Italy and have Italy as a hub for Europe and Latin America around this topic. This is good for us and this is good for our people in the sense that we are having a lot of interaction, not only with the local companies and partners, but even with the pan-European panel of people interested to understand the transformation that is possible in these industries. So even the people that is working within this center has an augmented capacity to understand what are the challenges and the answers that the different companies bringing to the different topics that are coming.
So foreign customers would come here in a way to see demonstration of this technology.
There is customers that are coming, there are partners that are coming. So we are working even with IBM and with other technology partners in this center. So the possibility to have a practical application, or as much as possible, a practical application of the concept in reality is giving a lot of inputs and lateral ideas on what is achievable.
Okay, thank you, Angelo. Now, I think I'll call also Tim back here. So, Tim, if you want to say something, that's going to be also, I will give you that chance now, if you want to say something more. But
I will not add anything except to say I'm delighted to be on stage with representatives of two such wonderful companies. Accenture actually get a nice mention in the book for some interesting work they were doing, and I was just singing the praises of IBM in a column recently, but asking why the corporations of today, like Google, are not able to achieve some of the deeper research that IBM was famous for in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So we have lots to discuss.
Yeah. Let me complement something that has been said by Angelo, because those kind of innovation centers are useful as a, let's say, showcase for something that is new in the world. But they are even more important because in those kind of centers we run workshop like design thinking workshop, because the importance when we have to innovate, and we said we need to redesign the business model, we need to bring together different competencies, the different discipline that they are the one that need to shape the new business model, the innovation we need to inject into the company. So it's really the new wave of collaboration with enterprises, with the experts coming from over the world, and in some cases also involving people from the university.
Yeah. Okay. So now the first question now for the panel I want to ask Angelo and Roberto. I want you to talk about the most interesting innovation you experienced firsthand in your experience in your company, in the over the last years.
Something I would like to share is the service science that is a new discipline that was developed by IBM 20 years ago. And this was happening in a specific period of transition of the economic environment from the economy that was product-based to economy that was mainly driven by services. So in that period, there was a strong need to develop new skills, new competencies, because at that time, people realized that the enterprises had not the competencies to drive this new wave in the economy. So this is something that is happening today. So, and those kind of cycle repeat in the economic environment, let's say every 20, 30 years. So what IBM did, so created this new discipline, had a lot of people in the IBM research lab focus to define the theory behind this scientific discipline, with the intent of doing what? To provide the models and all the scientific background to redefine the processes, to redefine, let's say, the pricing model for a service company, to redefine how marketing and sales should be redefined in the new concept of a service economy. So This is something I saw. I mean, when I joined IBM in 1990. So, and I saw the transition also inside IBM, because I mean, IBM at that time was mainly focused on product. I mean, focus on mainframe, printer, hard disk. And services at that time were embedded into the product. So we were used to sell mainframe, and software and services was part of the bundle. Then there was the shift in the market. There was, the presence in the market of the IBM compatible. So clients were buying hardware that were not part of the IBM offer. And we had to redefine the economic value, because services today are even more important than the hardware. I mean, hardware is becoming commodity. The services is what create the value.
I see. So, but the key challenge, I think, for services is the margin are often lower, because you need to customize them, and the human factor is very important, correct?
Yeah.
So compared to the product, where you can have large-scale production.
Yeah, services, I mean, the margin you have on the service, it depends on the value you deliver to the customer. And this is why we are entering in what we call the value space. In the business that is related to the analytics, to the understanding of the data, to extract the insight that is helpful to make a business decision that brings value to the client. So if you stay in that kind of business, on the kind of service business, you still have good marginality, because this is justified for the value you're bringing to the client.
Mm-hmm. I guess the IT technology, artificial intelligence, allows you to leverage some economies of scale in the production of services that you would have with products. So it becomes commoditized in a way. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not talking just for the internal production, in production for IBM, but I'm talking about also the production and the services we help our client to deliver. Okay?
Okay, great. So now, so if you have comments on this, I mean, it's also a good time also to take, comments from the audience as well, if you raise your hand. But
just this transition to services is interesting, because it's actually quite old. We've been wrestling with this for a long time. And one of the stories that stuck with me from the book was really the first time that anybody sat down and said, I am going to figure out what customers want to buy. And when I figured out what customers want to buy, I will sell that product as a service to companies. And I guess it's the next evolution of the mass marketing economy. So in the 19th century, we figure out how to produce more and more things more and more cheaply. This is, of course, before the digital age, but we're producing canned soup, and we're producing cars, and we're producing tools, and we're starting to get cheaper clothes off the peg. And people would just produce this stuff and put it in the shops and hope people bought it. And so it was this revolution in thinking, and really had to be justified, that no, maybe we should first figure out what people want, and then we'll make it. So we've had to go through these leaps in thinking about the logic of the market again and again. It was not at all obvious that anybody would want to pay money for somebody to tell them what consumers wanted.
Yeah. But that leads me to the question of how much is planned design and how much is a result of trial and error, in a sense.
And in
fact, there's always a back and forth between the two,
There's
correct?
a huge amount of trial and error, and in fact I wrote a whole book about the importance of trial and error. I was quite struck thinking about the transition that IBM made. They're famous for this transition of making these huge mainframe computers, and now it's a service company and consulting and software. And I think IBM is famous for making that leap, because so few companies successfully made the leap. When you actually look at the history of capitalism, it is generally not companies adapting, changing, coming up with new ideas and moving on. It is companies going extinct and being replaced by a new company. That doesn't always happen, but that is the standard mode. And actually, when you mathematically analyze the patterns of extinction, like how often do you get a year where loads of companies go bankrupt? How often do you get a year where nobody goes bankrupt or no big companies go bankrupt? The pattern actually looks very similar to the pattern you get from analyzing biological extinctions. There seems to be some deep mathematical principle at work. So yeah, trial and error, very important.
Okay, so now we turn to Roberto, to Angelo.
Yeah, but mainly it's somehow an easy question to answer what is an innovation that you experience firsthand, because if we refer to Tim's book, I think on point 27 there is the management consulting as one of the innovation that has created.
Great.
Yeah, and by the way, Accenture was mentioning it, so it's easy even if you want to link into the topic, no? So I'm experiencing every day somehow innovation, because this is a core of management consulting, no? Finding new solution or better solution for challenges of opportunities that companies or people can have. In the book, there is the reference of a project that's been done some time ago in India on the textile environment in Mumbai. There was a question, does management consulting worthwhile the money that they ask for? No? And there was a project done with the World Bank, I think, team on these things, where we were involved to help some companies in the textile environment of Mumbai to reorganize themselves, to find a different way to obtain a certain output. And it was proven that this was working. No? Yep. This is an example. Then
we have at least one example of Accenture earning their money.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe there are many more, but we have one very good example. So.
Yeah, that's it. And the point of innovation and the fact when innovation is bringing results and a little more the effect that it has on the ecosystem and what are the players that you need within innovation is if you want linkages to the topic that we were saying before. You need to have, when you think innovation in the context of a company or of a big player, there is the willingness to find something new and something that can help you to do the things better. On the other side, if you put yourself on the chair of a CEO of a big company, there is also a point of risk mitigation. So you want on one side to go with a trial and error and reinvention kind of things. On the other side, there is a point of risk mitigation and how much outside in thought I'm able to bring in my company in order to obtain these things. And I think this is the essence of management consulting today, that should take in consideration the disruptive impact that technology can have in the environment, no? And should be able to accelerate the possibility for companies and people to understand what are the implications of these things and how these things can be used in the context of the business world. And this is what we are trying to do, as we were saying before, in the center like the one that we were mentioning before. As Accenture, we have created a sort of, we call it innovation architecture, that is trying to answer, not only with stuff that we are doing, connecting to the world, to answer on what the people want, market research, as there is also in your book. Then it goes down to who is doing a pure R&D on technology, and it's not only Accenture. There are many other players that are doing these things. How these things can be applied in a new business model. What kind of change this may have in my context. No? How this can be designed in a human-centric way in order to augment the capacity of the people for a better outcome. No? And all these things need to come together as quick as possible and in a way where in one place in the world I can have the experience of the rest of the world. And this is the kind of things where I think management consulting plays a role in innovation. Even very simple stuff has a huge impact. Still relating to the book, there is, I think in the first chapter, the point of the plug. I don't know if it means plug, the aratro.
The plow.
The plow, yeah. That is a very simple stuff, and I was fascinated to read all the implication or the thinking that you can do about it, not only because it helped to improve the productivity by 5 times the productivity of working without it, but for the possibility to transform the way in which the people was living, the implication in the role of the people within the family, the way in which richness was accumulated and distributed around the people. So this is, to me, very interesting, the overall effect that innovation has in the world.
Yeah, I mean, at first the plow is developed and it's just a technology that increases our productivity, right? We grow more stuff. But then, of course, everything starts to change. So one thing, as you say, is there's more of a division of labor between the sexes. The men are out there plowing, the women are at home, and they're grinding the grain. So and then suddenly the men start wondering, what are the women doing back at home? And now I own something, I own a farm. So then the men start to get very concerned about what the women are doing, and are their children really their children? So you have a total social change. You also have a change in the geography of Europe based on a change in ploughing technology. So the early ploughs work very well in dry soils. In Greece, in Italy, in Spain, and around the Mediterranean, these simple ploughs, very powerful. And then along comes a new kind of plough, the moldboard plough. This is a plough that turns the soil over, and it's very useful in the heavy, wet, northern soils. And you can see, as the moldboard plough is invented, suddenly the money is moving from Venice to Antwerp, and up to Germany, and to the Netherlands, and to northern France. And the whole center of gravity moves just because of this one technology, changes everything.
Yeah. And I think, if I can just, if you use this analogy in the context of a big corporation that wants to look to an innovation that can impact or not his own business, there is a huge effect, even in a transformation that the company has to do to himself in order to exploit whatever innovation they want to put. And that, I think, is the role of innovation, management, consulting, and the things that we were mentioning before.
So you can sort of read the history of civilization through the history of innovations. And in a way, you're saying also at the corporate level, there is a cultural change around every innovation. Yeah. You need to change so many things around it that are, to make best use of the innovation. Yeah. Yeah. So now, but, more specifically, if you are, going back to, again, to Angelo, so you also see small level innovations like process innovation, for example, in retail, the areas in which you are doing management consulting. So what do you see, some promising innovations you see in front of your eyes now?
You can see from 2 points of view. No? From the point of view of the direct impact on the business of the company we are working with, for sure, automation, artificial intelligence, and all the topic about personalization. And personalization in the context of the experience that the single consumer, customer is doing is an area where for sure there will be a lot of development and opportunities. We were working here in Italy in the creation of the concept of the supermarket of the future. That is not so much the future is today in reality, where there was, and we have created it, by the way, here in Milan, in the area of Bicocca, with Coop. Coop is the company with whom we created it. And if you see, with the usage of technology, some artificial intelligence, we have tried to recreate the concept of the whole market that was at the center of the city. That was even a point where information was coming to the people and there was exchange of information, keeping, if you want, automated and as much as possible, not too much heavy action that are not so enjoying for the people. So you trade, with the same time you trade more information, you connect better with people, you connect better with the usage of the product that then you want to purchase, and you automate and eliminate stuff that are no value added for your personal experience in that context. So this is an area where I think we will see more and more.
The social interaction is more interesting in a way around that kind of format.
Yeah,
and the
social interaction, but even the completion of you're buying something for a purpose. Maybe when you're buying it, you can get much more about that purpose than just buying the product.
You get some tips and suggestions that you would used to get in the marketplace.
But I think it's an interesting point, because very often the way that technology manifests itself is there's an unbundling of things that were always done together. And technology will, and we take it for granted. It will always be this way, and then technology takes some of it out. And we see this in the way jobs work. So I gave the example of the Jennifer unit. This is a situation where someone has a job, and the job is to walk around a warehouse, to keep track of the stock, to have a list of the stock, tick it off, update the inventory, to understand where things are, to make decisions about storage, and to move material around the warehouse. And this person still has a job, but some of those tasks have gone to the computer. Now the computer locates things on the shelves, the computer keeps track of inventory, the computer ticks things off the list, and now the worker is just left with this very boring job of moving things around. But there are more exciting examples of that. So a more positive example is in accountancy. Double-entry bookkeeping, by the way, is one of the inventions and was pioneered here in Italy, very important Italian invention. But in accountancy in the 1970s, there was this very skilled but boring job. You have a huge piece of paper with numbers written on it, and all the numbers have to add up. And you're there with a pencil and with an eraser, maybe a calculator, you're tapping out, and you're erasing numbers and recalculating, and it could take hours or days to redo this. And this was an important part of a junior accountant's job. And then, 1979, VisiCalc comes on the market. It is a digital spreadsheet, because this piece of paper was called a spreadsheet. Now we have a digital spreadsheet, and suddenly it's so quick. All these jobs go. But, although I say the jobs go, but really it's not the jobs, it's the tasks, because we still have the accountants, and now the accountants find something else to do, something more interesting to do. So in the case of Jennifer, the most interesting part of the job went to the computer. In the case of accounting, the most boring part of the job went to the computer. So it's hard to predict, but a good guide is always break down what is happening, because technology will change little strips one at a time, which is why the design thinking that you're talking about is so important to understand this situation.
So Roberto, some innovations you see in front of your eyes that you think are particularly exciting?
Yeah, I mean, there are a sort of innovation that are specifically relevant for people with disabilities. So technology that can really improve life of people that has, difficulties. And here, technology can help in two specific dimensions. Improving the accessibility of the information, because people that have, difficulties to read and to understand some concept can be supported by technology. And the second dimension is mobility. People want to be independent, to move in the city, to move in the house, to move when they go to the mall for shopping or for any other activity. So here, I mean, I know, because I was in Tokyo a couple of weeks ago. We have already a technological solution that can be implemented today. And my regret is that actually we should deploy more of those kind of activities. There are solutions that enable blind people to use their mobile to move into a shopping mall and ask the mobile, I want to buy a bag of potato chips, where I need to go. And the blind person receives precise instruction on how many meters he or she has to walk, when to turn right, where to turn left, where the potato chip is positioned on the shelf. So it's something that allows people to be independent, or other solutions that are able to translate the speech into a text, so persons that are deaf can participate in the conversation in a conference call, or applications that are able to simplify a content for people that have cognitive disabilities, or also for people that maybe are not well knowledge of a specific language. So some solution can be relevant for everybody.
So I was actually the day before yesterday at the inauguration of the new campus of Humanitas University here in Milan.
Yeah.
And so I learned about that they've been using IBM Watson for training purposes to train surgeons.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about work in that area?
This is the area of let's call personalized education. So we can use artificial intelligence to help the students to improve their knowledge. Why? Introducing the knowledge of a specific domain. It can be medicine, it can be law, it can be any practice. And the student can use this solution to study, and when you study a topic, then you have to run a test. And when you run a test, you make mistake. And the system, based on your mistake, recognize where you are weak or what you have not really understood. So the next step, the homework you receive is aligned to the gap you have to close. So this is why we call personalized, because your learning path is consistent with your progress, and this is, is relevant for student at university, but is more relevant for people that have cognitive difficulties, people with autism, because the learning they do is consistent with the pace they can afford.
I think the interesting thing, though, about technology that assists people with disabilities is that some of it is really very simple. Yeah. Some of it is hugely sophisticated, of course, but some is so simple. When I was a student, I used to go to the Bodleian Library in Oxford and read books for the blind. So there would be a request that a particular book be read, and I would go, and I had a tape recorder and a microphone. I would open the book, and I would start to read, and press a button every paragraph so that the person would make a beep. People could follow what I'd done. Just the time and effort involved in making that possible. And now, of course, it's just the simplest thing in the world. The book exists in an e-format. Anyone on their smartphone has a technology that can read an e-format book aloud, and it's easy to listen to, and it effectively now costs nothing. And what we have to pay attention to is that we don't accidentally or sometimes deliberately put up barriers to allow that kind of usage. So one problem that we've had is some content owners putting up digital locks that prevent. Well, they're supposed to prevent copying, but actually they also prevent this completely legitimate use of using a smartphone to read out the text. So sometimes we need to use very sophisticated technologies like IBM's Watson. Sometimes we just need to get out of the way, because we think about the world, of course, we think, here we are, 4 men on stage, and able-bodied, and we think about certain people's needs, and then we miss other people's needs. So we need to keep listening, keep our minds open, and make sure that we don't put up barriers that don't need to be there.
Okay, so one question as economists we can ask whether there should be some innovations that could be socially valuable that don't come out, don't come to the market, that don't manage to succeed. Maybe the private incentive is not enough, doesn't correspond to the full social value of the innovation. So the question is whether you have seen innovations that you came across, you thought that would be actually socially valuable, but that was not really developed because of lack of incentives.
I mean, the deployment is not fast as we might expect. But I see, let's say, a positive trend because most of the companies recognize the value, and because there is let's say, an imperative we need to face. And the imperative is that those solutions are relevant for, in the area we call aging, people that are becoming elderly. So this portion of the society is growing and growing. And we want to make sure that we are able to help the elderly people to live at home as much as possible, because it's their expectation. I mean, in the survey we did last year, the first request that was expressed by the elderly people was to spend as much possible at their home and not to be hospitalized. And this is aligned to the expectation of the people, and is consistent with the need to keep the healthcare system affordable, because we cannot afford to have so many people hospitalized. So here we have the convergence of two interests: the person that want to stay at home safe as much as possible, and the need to keep the cost as low as possible, or at least affordable by the government.
I think that there is an incredible amount of value that is still trapped in our system, and they put the system a little large, no? That can be enabled with technology-led innovation. And I think that what the policymakers should do is to facilitate the adoption of the newest technology, obviously, with the possibility to influence and to facilitate where possible the convergence of the profit and non-profit utilization of the untrapped value. We have some example, for example, here in Italy, no, of some stuff that our government is doing on the Industry 4.0 incentives, no, to facilitate the transformation of the production system, no, within the Italian economy. That is in any case important because we are a big manufacturing country. That gives the opportunity and the push to adopt new technology. No? With the introduction of innovation, you have also a concept of winner and losers. No? And this is also in Team Book, where the winners maybe can be a lot of people with a little win, and the loser can be few people with a big loss. No? So I think that the other things that the policymakers should be doing in order to facilitate the adoption and the introduction of new technologies is, where possible, to be able to manage this winner and loser stuff, making sure that we are not losing people on the track. In the example of the Industry X.0 stuff within the Italian system, for sure there will be huge possibility of improved productivity in the utilization of technology in the production cycle, as well as there is the need of repurpose and retrain and bring together a full workforce towards the new technologies and towards the new basic stuff that you need to know in the new environment. So I think there is this dual stuff that needs to happen. On one side, technologies that improves, that gives new opportunities, from my point of view, is always good. The point is the purpose and the way by which we are directing these things, keeping in mind that whatever transformation has a winner and a loser, so you need to take care of both, yeah. No? And to redistribute or to distribute in a proper way the value that is generated out of this innovation. To me, this is a key point.
But another pattern you see, you were saying sometimes you see everybody wins a little bit except a small number of people have a big loss. A very common pattern is the reverse, yeah. Where everybody loses a little bit, so little they don't really notice, and then there's a few people who really gain a lot. They're the billionaires.
For sure.
And for example, we all lose a little bit because Mickey Mouse is still in copyright. Yeah, we have to pay more for our Disney movies. We don't see strange mashups of Mickey Mouse and Superman and all this cool stuff we could see. It's still owned by Disney. Now, there's no economic justification for this. We give Disney ownership of Mickey Mouse for a limited period of time to encourage innovation, but then after 20 years, maybe we take it away. But now it's more like 100 years. Mickey Mouse is older than the computer. Can you imagine if the rights to make computers were still held by one single company, probably IBM, and that nobody, not Microsoft, not Google, not Apple, nobody else, just one company had control? There would be no justification for this, and we would be very much poorer for it. But in copyright, we have this very weird situation where we continue to extend copyrights beyond all logic. I discuss this in the book and I explain why it happens, but it would be great if we changed that. I mean, as an author, I really value copyright. It's great that I am protected. People are not allowed to just rip off copies of my book. That's great. I promise you, I don't need 100 years of copyright. It's really not needed. In 100 years' time, if people are still want to pay money for my books, then they've been so successful it doesn't matter. But most probably in 100 years' time, no one will want to read my books. And either way, we don't need copyright for 100 years.
If you think this is what should happen, no? I have the example of what happens in the pharmaceutical sector, no? Where there was the protection of the new drugs produced that after a certain period of time now becomes possible to be open up to the rest of the market. So I think this is exactly the kind of roles that the policymaker and the institution should play in this stuff. Not putting obstacle, but trying to direct the stuff. If when you're something that is improving the productivity, improving the possibility, is always good. Then it's up to us to direct it in the proper way. And just coming to the other example that he was making on, I don't see the Jennifer things only as a risk, but also as an opportunity, no? Because coming to what he was saying. We all, in different ways, are looking, for example, the application of artificial intelligence for good, no? for the society. And in reality, if there is an augmented capability, this augmented capability, even on the sensory side, can be brought to improve a situation for people. We were talking of the application of artificial intelligence, image recognition, virtual reality, to the application for blind people, no? Exactly the example that he was making before. We all somehow are working. There is something that we are doing in India, and in Sanskrit language means view, that is an application that is helping the people that is blind to recognize the environment in which they are and the people that is there. Then 3 weeks ago in our racing, we were doing an open innovation workshop where there was a different startup invited, and there was a startup of a young guy here in Italy that is doing something similar, already applied to glasses that a blind guy can set up. It has the same logic, but is also recognizing the people you have already met and remembering the people that you already met. So when you're entering a room, the blind person will have the context and the presence of the people in. I think there is opportunities. The key point is how we direct this opportunity. And in any case, if the total value is increasing, it means that it's good. So we just need to see how to manage this total value.
Maybe a question I have for Tim, whether in the innovations you look at, government had a role, important role to play.
Yeah, I mean, government usually has some role, and sometimes fails to take action when it should. So one example in the book is lead in petrol. This was really an innovation we didn't need. There were other ways to solve the technical problem, and it did a tremendous amount of damage. But the government just outsourced its research effort to the big oil and chemical companies, and it was a public health disaster. So there's an example where the government should have regulated and did nothing. But then there are other examples where the government is regulating when it shouldn't be regulating. So Disney, the government is saying nobody can copy Mickey Mouse. This is crazy. Of course we should be able to copy Mickey Mouse. It's been 100 years. So sometimes the government does the wrong thing by doing nothing. Sometimes the government does the wrong thing by doing something. But sometimes the government absolutely does the right thing. And the most interesting example of this in the book is the iPhone. You think about the iPhone, you think Steve Jobs. Of course, Steve Jobs, Apple, created the iPhone. Yeah, sort of. But when you look inside a smartphone and you say, what is in this technology? You go, okay, first of all, the touchscreen. The touchscreen was invented by an offshoot of the British government, the Royal Radar Establishment. The integrated circuits, funded by the US government. They underwrote a lot of that effort. The internet is a US military project itself. Siri voice activation was designed for fighter pilots. The global positioning system that tells you where you are is an American military application. So these amazing devices, yes, they were perfected by private companies, by great entrepreneurs, great designers, and I'm very grateful to Apple and Steve Jobs for bringing these things to market. But the building blocks were funded and supported by governments. And we need to remember, sometimes when we think about innovation, we think that government can't ever do anything right. And that's not true. There are counterexamples as well.
Okay. So I think we are drawing to an end. If you have questions, we are also happy to take maybe a couple of quick questions, please. See whether you can speak up. Let's see.
Oh, we have a microphone.
Do we have a microphone there? Yes, thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time. I have a question about just the role of humans in the future, is how we could not be the monkeys controlled by Jennifer, basically. Like what suggestions do you have for humans just making sure that they're the ones that are controlling the machines rather than having really the machines dictate their life and we're stuck doing the boring manual work?
So it's a great question. Partly we all just have to be really, really nice to IBM and tell them to make sure that Watson is kind to us as Watson evolves to become a super intelligence. But of course, the usual things, we need to pay attention to creativity, we need to pay attention to human skills, to education. But I think there's no perfect defense. The rule that seems to apply is that computers take the routine jobs. Not the skilled jobs or the unskilled jobs, but the routine jobs. So computers do not clean toilets. Robots do not clean toilets, because that is actually not a routine job. It's a complicated job. For a human, it's unskilled, but it's difficult for a machine. On the other hand, a computer can take the job of recalculating numbers on a spreadsheet, even though to a human it's highly skilled. So in some cases, the computers have pushed us to very boring jobs, like the Jennifer unit. But in other cases, like the spreadsheet, it's pushed us more to more creative spaces. So I think we need to bear this in mind. And we also need to bear in mind that we have choices as consumers of technology and users of technology. So just a simple exercise, just for a moment, think about things that you do more effectively when you're connected to the internet. When you're online, you have email, you have social media, you think about things that is easier for you to do. Okay? You can call that to mind. Now think about things that you do more effectively when you are not connected to the internet. You know, it's easier to read a book. It's easier to have a conversation with somebody. It's easier to appreciate food in front of you. There are various things that are easier when you're not connected. Now, the only thing you have to then ask is, do you consciously decide, I will be connected now, and I will not be connected now? Because now is a good time, it's going to help me, and now is a bad time, and being connected will get in the way. I think if we were more conscious about the way we use technology, we have a lot of power as consumers. We have a lot of choices, and we don't always use them. Thanks for the question.
So there was another question as well we saw. Yeah, please.
My question is to Mr. Angelo D'Imporzano, who was talking about the fact that we have many benefits for many and few huge losses for some when an innovation comes to the labor market. So he was suggesting an intervention from the government, and I think this is a very interesting suggestion. And in particular, I think that we talked a lot about those jobs that will get backscaled in a sense, but there are also some jobs that will be completely automated. And that means that those people will lose all of their tasks, job-specific skills, and they won't be useful anymore. So for those people that will probably find another job where they start from zero job-specific skills, what could bring, even in like from a government point of view, what could be done to facilitate their going back to the labor market for a firm that has to hire this person and they don't have any job-specific skills? I don't know if that was clear.
No. It was clear. It was clear, and somehow this is the point that I was trying to make with the example of Industry X.0 application within the context of the Italian market. No, we are. If you think to Italy, we are the second biggest manufacturing country across Europe. First one is Germany, Italy is the second. No? Or medium, small company, if you compare it to the world, to the different sizes, with a good amount of offshoring of the activities. Now, what Industry X.0, Industry 4.0 can bring? Government is giving some facilitation for company to reinvest in Italy, to reinvest on technology, to reinshore activities. Obviously, with a different level of productivity, so not the same amount of jobs. And these things need to be, we need to go in parallel, no? With introducing these things and giving the people the possibility to reskill themselves in the new, if you want, world, where different kind of competency would have a different value than the value that there was before. Yeah. So I think this is when I'm saying there is not something that the government can do to manage the overall economy. These changes that are disruptive sometimes are bigger than the things that a single government or a single player within a government can manage. But what the government can try to do is to facilitate devolution and to give the people the opportunity to reskill and interpret themselves in the context of a different setup. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. I think it's a really difficult problem. So one of the most influential research papers in economics in the last couple of years studied the impact of trade with China on the American economy. And you might think, well, that's a different question, but really, actually, trade is very, very similar to a technological change, very similar. And the prediction is, trade with China will affect some workers, but overall, people will be better off, which is true. And then the prediction is, and the workers who are disadvantaged, they will move around, and eventually they will find new jobs, and it will be bad in the short term, but eventually it will be okay. Well, what we've discovered is, no, it's not okay. It doesn't seem to ever be okay for these workers because particular communities are damaged, their economies are gutted, and then 10 years later, you still have a problem. What we do about this, I think, is really hard because I don't think we should be banning trade with China and I don't think we should be banning new technologies. When you look at the long view, the idea that you will ever be able to hold back this tide or that we should doesn't look like a good one to me. So there was a moment where all of New York's elevator operators went on strike in the 1940s. No elevators. The elevator operators go on strike because they were worried about automation. Well, of course, the automation came all the quicker. And now it would be absurd to say, well, these people had jobs. People should have jobs pressing the buttons in elevators. So we have to adapt, but it's tough. So the retraining, the subsidies you discussed, yeah, maybe. In the long term, maybe we need a basic income for everybody. That's a very long-term thing. But another thing is we also need to look at the barriers that we sometimes put in place to people moving, retraining. So in the US, a big barrier is people's health insurance is connected to their job. And so you can't move somewhere else because you lose your health insurance. So mobility is going down in the US because of this. And in my own country, the UK, we have a big tax on buying and selling a house. So you own a house, and there's a problem with your job, and there's a new job 50 miles away, and you think, okay, I'll sell my house and buy a new house. You can't do it because there's this huge tax on the transaction. It's crazy. And I'm sure there are problems, exactly the same kind of problem in Italy. So the first thing we have to do is to look, what is getting in the way of allowing people to be flexible. But I think it's a deep problem, and I don't think we can pretend that there are any easy answers.
Okay. So, so if there are no more questions, I think maybe I just want to thank the speakers. Say, maybe going back to the statement I was making at the beginning, thinking about universities, what kind of skills should we give to our students, to the new generations? Because the tasks they will do are changing. And I think, the title here is Creativity and Science. I think it's hard to teach somebody to be creative. So it's something you acquire in your experience. Maybe science, we can teach that. But I think, in my view, there are two elements to one is science and this knowledge, the ability of reasoning in a rigorous way is very important. That's what universities should give students. And the other one is also the ability to communicate, because think about all these innovations. And so often my colleagues as well complain, oh, I had this great idea, but was not recognized. Somebody else got the credit. But if you actually look, the one who gets the credit is typically not the first one who comes with the idea, is the one who is able to convince users to have a valuable idea. Explains how to use it, how to makes it, then adopted. And that's essential. The reward is given to those who are actually able to explain and convince that they have something useful. So, and that's efficient in a way, because if you have a good idea and you cannot explain how to use it, how good is that? Nobody can use it. So it's an essential skill I think we should work on. One is knowledge and math, scientific skills, but also on communication skills, which involve also human element, which is very important. There is some sort of scientific humanity that we have to invest in my view at least, to have flexible people who can cope with innovations in a flexible way. So at least that's my conclusion. I'm sure you'll have different conclusions, but thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our speakers, to Tim, Angelo, Roberto, and to everybody for your patience. So the competition was very tough. My wife decided not to come here because the Ernest Nam, the Met Pâtissier, had a castle. There was a nice tour of the 80 best foods of Italy. So there are many things going on these days, so I hope you take best advantage of Bookcity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.